Welcome to this morning talk. I hope you're awake and didn't party too long yesterday. I'm here to talk about Jakarta EE11, which we have the theme words, performance and developer productivity. And I hope you'll get to see why we do that. So my name is Ivar Grimstad. I'm the Jakarta EE developer advocate at Eclipse Foundation. I'm on all the social media. I know Mastodon is popular here in Germany, so you probably use that one. If you use any other, just feel free to connect with me before or after or during the talk. I'm also involved in a lot of open source foundations, organizations, and projects like Jakarta EE. I work for Eclipse Foundation. I'm an Apache NetBeans committer, and I run a Java user group in Malmö in Sweden as well. And for all of this, I'm also a Java champion. So let's look at some timeline. And if we go back to 2020, that's when we released Jakarta EE9. And the main theme of Jakarta EE9 was the namespace change. So we didn't do anything else in that release than the namespace change and make sure it compiled on Java 11. And the reason for that was because of the namespace change. Because we didn't want that migration from previous releases to this one to be that difficult. And if you're a Spring developer, any Spring developers, so if you're a Spring developer, you probably have migrated from 2 to 3 of Spring Boot or to Spring Framework 6. And you should be happy for this, that we didn't change anything else. Because the only thing the Jakarta related you had in that migration was because of the namespace. We didn't change the APIs. It still hurts, I know, and we feel for you. We're not going to do it again, though. So yeah, and in 2022, 2 years later, we did Jakarta EE10, which is the current release. And the main thing there was the new core profile. And I'll get back to that in a second. And now, 2 years later, so you see we have this sort of established release cadence. We haven't formally said it yet, but it's coming. And in 2024, in June, July this year, we're going to release Jakarta EE11. And this talk is about what to expect there. So, first of all, Jakarta EE is all about specifications. It's not a framework like Spring, it's specifications. And when we talk about specifications, we have a textual description of the technology, a document in PDF or HTML or some other human-readable form. It's an API artifact that you as developers use and get from Maven Central. And it's a TCK or test compatibility kit that we use to validate that an implementation fulfills the requirements of the specification. And if it does, it's a compatible implementation. And we need at least one open source compatible implementation in order to ratify the specification as final, just to prove that it is implementable. From there, you can use any license. But of course, we prefer open source. So Jakarta EE10 is the one out there now. And Jakarta EE10 had a lot of updates. So in 9, we didn't update the specifications other than the namespace. In 10, we did update a lot of specifications. And if you're using Spring Boot 3, you're already using some of these, because even though the baseline for Spring Boot 3 is Jakarta EE9, they pull in all the stuff from 10 as well. If you're using Hibernate, you get the new stuff there. You even get Jakarta EE11 stuff soon in Spring Boot, because if you're using Spring Data or JPA through Hibernate there. And you're already using Servlet 6 in Spring Boot. So this is the 10 release. If we compare this to Jakarta EE11, you can see it's about the same number of blue, that's the updated ones, and one new one in this release as well. And in the new release here is Jakarta Data. And if you're Spring developers, you probably know Spring Data, and Jakarta Data does the same thing as Spring Data does, and I'll demo that later. And so we just bring back that stuff to the standards as well. So, Jakarta EE10, 11, I mean. So, the platform is all of these specifications. If we peel away the enterprise-y flavored, we're left with web profile. And web profile has been with us since Java EE6, so it's been here for a while. And that's more the traditional web applications. It's comparable to the traditional Spring framework. And if we peel away the webby or UI sort of specification, we're left with a stack of specifications that are targeting microservices or headless services. And that's the Jakarta EE core profile. And that was introduced in 10, the first time we did a new profile since Java EE6. And it's targeting smaller runtimes. And the key here is CDI Lite, that was introduced in 10. And CDI Lite allows us to remove all the dynamic properties of CDI that is usually resolved at runtime and resolve it at build time, so you can compile to native images if it's a core profile compatible implementation. So you can use GraalVM here if that's your flavor. Jakarta 11 will raise its API source levels to Java SE 17. But we will also, and that means that we won't use any higher than 17 features in the APIs itself. So they will be compiled to the binary level of 17. But we will test it on 21. So we will make sure that it works on 17 and 21, and even higher. But at least 21. So you can use all the Java 21 features that you want to use in your applications, as long as your runtime supports it. And most of them do. And I talked about release cadence. We're sort of establishing this that will make us continue this 2-year sort of cadence about 6 months after the latest LTS of Java. So 21 was released in September. So 9 months later, it's June or July. So around there is where we plan on release a Jakarta EE 11 or Jakarta release. So you can now count the months to when Jakarta EE 12 will come. It will be related to the next Java SE LTS. So we also introduced milestones in this release, and you can see it. I know we're in May month. We're still on April here because we have done everything. All these specifications, some of them should be finished by each milestone, but it takes a little while to get them out to Maven Central, to get everything published. They have been approved, they have been released, they're just at the final steps. So Jakarta RESTful is in Maven Central, the 4 others we're waiting for to get to Maven Central, and then we can release a milestone 3 of the API as well. So we're almost there. And we're already working on the milestone 4 to get those specifications out. So we're sort of in track with a little small date slipping, but we still believe on the June-July release date. The milestones, we don't require compatible implementations for the platform or the individual specifications if they do milestone releases. If it's a final release, you have to have a compatible implementation and a TCK that works. But the milestones, if it's just API updates, we can put them in there. So, performance and developer productivity. To achieve this, we do some cross-cutting concerns, or there's some in the release. And one of them is we're getting rid of managed beans. It's been there for a while, and it has been replaced by other alternatives. So CDI can do whatever managed beans was meant to do. So we're just removing it. It has been deprecated for a while, so we're removing that specification from the platform entirely. Security Manager is deprecated for removal in JET 4.11 in Java SE. And while it's still there and still can be used, we just want to be a little ahead of the game, so we remove all references to the Security Manager in the specifications. They will still work in wherever it's used in the implementations, but we don't require it, and we won't fail tests because of it not being there. So we're kind of removing the references to it. It's not a big impact if you're not using the Security Manager. And if you're using Security Manager, chances are you're using the allow all anyway, so you can just remove that configuration. If you're using the Security Manager, you can still do so as long as your implementation supports it. We're embracing Java records throughout the release. And we're getting rid of some optional features. So I'm talking optional features, but I'm also talking about optional specifications. So in the platform specifications, we're not allowing anything optional. In the component specifications, we're allowing optional features, but they are not optional any longer when they come to the platform. They're either in or out, and it has to be very clearly specified. And we're removing those optional specifications that has been optional for a while. Implementations will probably still support them going forward, but we're not requiring it. I'm going to go quickly through the updates of the specification, and I'll group the security specification together. So obviously, Security Manager has an impact on security. We're removing all references to the Security Manager and doing clarifications across the board. We're updating the authorization APIs and the interceptors, and also some permission store updates. We're also making it ready to properly use JSON Web Tokens for authorization, and it's already supported in microprofile JSON Web Token specification. So we're bridging that with a specification in between, so we don't have dependencies on microprofile, because that would create a circle, since microprofile is on top of Jakarta EE, and we don't want circles in the dependency graph. So that's why we're creating a light specification in between that both can rely on. That specification isn't quite ready, but it will be incorporated when it is. And security is currently are 3 specifications. It's security, which is the API that we as developers use, and we have the authorization and authentication, which is more service provider interface for the implementers or special interested implementers of security libraries and stuff, but we as developers don't use them that much directly. Concurrency is interesting because that will provide support for virtual threads. And you probably know in Jakarta EE and Java EE traditionally, we kind of like threads, but we don't want our developers to mess with them. We want them to be used through these managed things, like the managed executor service and etc. So you may use threads, but let the application server handle it for you. And how's this going to work with virtual threads? And another question, how is this going to work if we're on 17? So what we're doing is that we kind of sneak it into the APIs. We don't depend on anything in 21. We just add this virtual flag, virtual equal true or false, in the APIs where appropriate. And then we specify that it should have Java SE runtime aware support of virtual threads. What this means is that if you're on 21 and you set this flag to true, you'll get a virtual thread. If you're on 17 and you set this flag to true, you'll get a platform thread. So we have the support, but we don't have to expose it through the APIs. Concurrency, you can find more on this. All these URLs have the same structure. It's the Jakarta EE /specifications, then you have the short name of the specification and the version number. And if you remove the version number, you'll find all versions of that specification. So CDI, support for records and field types, so you can inject these. Also add priority on producers, so you can specify more clearly which one is going to be executed first or at all, and also remove the expression language service provider interface. We're also doing some integration stuff, or more technical, moving text from one document to another. So CDI has a lot of integration text in their document and requirements for integration with EJBs and other kind of platform technologies. And we're moving all this integration stuff where it belongs in the platform. So CDI gets a little lighter in terms of what's required and the text around it. And the specification URL, you can find it here. It's a version 41, so it's not a major update or anything. Expression language are making Java beans optional, embracing records, and just clearing up and cleaning a little bit here and there. So phases, also a small release, removing the security manager, and the managed beans has already been removed. And also moving along the CDI-centric approach and relying more on CDI. And fixing a little bit events here and there. So it's kind of a maintenance release of phases. Servlet also had a big release last version. So here it's the security manager. The most interesting thing here is you get more fine-grained control over the response codes and bodies. So when you do a redirect, you have more fine-grained control of exactly what code and stuff you want to send there. Previously, it was just covered by the implementation and done. with the default stuff. So here you have more fine-grained control. Persistence, they have a lot of updates. So here's Java records again. You can use now records set as embeddable classes or IDs in your entity classes. Whereas you usually you need to use this @persistent context to inject the persistent manager. Now you can use @inject, so it's CDI friendly. Also Java-based configuration, so you don't need the persistent XML file. If you don't like XML, you can do it in Java. They also removed the old calendar API and all the Java date stuff, and introduced the new, or it's not new, it's kind of old, but newer Java time APIs. So now you can year and instant and those kind of things directly there. So you get the Java configuration and a lot of stuff in the criteria language. So it's a lot of convenience methods, like if you're doing math stuffs from the database, you have a lot of these convenience stuff, so you don't have to write the SQL for it. So pages, also expression language updates, it depends on that one, and also depends on servlets. So it's kind of just cleaning up whatever those specifications provided. WebSockets, also minor updates, and the security manager again. We're soon at the end of it. So validation, that's an interesting one, because we're now supporting to properly validate records. It has worked before, but now it's specified how and that it should work. So it's more by accident that you could put an @email or @notnull on fields in a record. But now it's specified that it is actually working. So you can rely on it. And that's the only thing we do with validation. It's such a good spec as it is. So. RESTful services are also doing the CDI kind of thing, getting rid of or deprecating the @context. So you don't have to use @context to get the URI info to build URLs. For example, you can use @inject directly. But it's deprecated now, and it will be replaced in next release. And also the biggest change here is to make Jakarta XML binding optional. And if you remember, XML binding was one of the specifications we removed from the platform. So we cannot have a dependency on it. So that's why they need to have remove that hard dependency to make it optional, and it's not part of the platform. But you can still use it if you're on Jersey or REST-DC or any other REST implementation. So annotations, that they do one thing, because we removed the managed beans specification, and that managed beans annotation is in the common annotations library. So they have to remove that annotation so we don't use it by accident, because there's nothing supporting it. And interceptors are doing some stuff that is more for the kind of those who deal with that kind of things, and that is standard access to intercepted binding. It's kind of an advanced thing, so not many people are actually using it. I've never used it, but they do some convenience method on the interface that is very good to have if they deal with interceptors. So you get more control over this kind of stuff that you could do otherwise, but now you have the standard methods for doing it. So you may have noticed I've forgotten one or skipped one, and that's data. And this is the specification we're actually most excited about for this release. And Jakarta Data is standardizing the repository pattern for data access. It's new in Jakarta 11. As Spring developers, you've used Spring Data for a long time, so you will know all of this. But now we finally have it in the platform of Jakarta EE as well. And this could have been a Spring code. It just depends on which imports you're using. So we're having the same APIs. And this is where you need to probably be a little careful. So if you're using Spring Data today, and you're upgrading to some random Spring Boot 3.something release, maybe in August or something, chances are you'll pull in Hibernate 7. Because usually you don't have control of what's pulled in for you with Spring Boot, right? It's just some dependency magic that happens. And currently you are on Hibernate 6, and by some minor update you probably get Hibernate 7. And a little bit danger or things to know about here is that Jakarta data is implemented by Hibernate. So if you're a little careless when doing the imports, you may get a Jakarta repository CRUD repository in your import statements and not a Spring data CRUD repository. So you need to pay attention to those packages. Unless they do something fancy and exclude it in some way, they probably can do or will do. But it could happen that if you're, especially if you're just pulling in a raw Hibernate in your Spring Boot application. So this is where you have to pay a little attention. But the good side of it is that it probably won't matter that much because you can probably use Jakarta data and Spring data. I don't know how they will work, but if you mix them, but that's an interesting thing to test if you have the time to do that. We're also doing and this is something Spring Data doesn't have, and that's the Jakarta Data Query Language, or JDQL, which is a subset of the Jakarta Persistence Query Language. And here, this is a very simple example, but here's you can write queries like this, or much more advanced like this, but you can write very nice, simple, readable queries, and not rely on the title of your interface method. You can actually specify more how you want it to be. So here also, if you create a carefully crafted name like books by type, and then and you search by title, this can be confusing. So this is both a very good example and a very horrible example. So don't do this in production, but you can try it. So let's look at a demo. So I have a Jakarta 11 application here. I'm running on 22, of course. Who's on 22? 21? Good. 17? 11? Nobody on 8, right? No. It's always one, right? I feel for you. I'm sorry. Yeah, but you have to get there. It's so much better. It's such a good world there. So I'm using the milestone 2 since we haven't released the milestone 3 to Maven Central yet. So I have the 11 milestone, and that's all I have. So for Spring developers, this is the only dependency I need. This is how my POM file looks. The other things are just some plugin stuff. I'm using Open Liberty here as the implementation, since that was the first implementation ready for Jakarta data. So the application itself is a Jakarta REST application. So you can see it has this application configuration here. It's just says that use this /API. I have a greeting entity class that has a ID of type long and a name and a message. So it's very simple and just getters and setters. The greeting resource is this is the same as the REST controller in Spring. So I have the at path /greetings, and it's a get method that produces JSON and just do a find all. And here it returns just an empty string because I'll fill it in later. And also I have a post where I can add a greeting. So if I run this one, I can do this Maven Liberty dev. So it just fires up Open Liberty and here, and I can just fix the changes, and this is it's up and running. So this is what you would call WebSphere back in the days. It starts in like 1 second. Which Spring Boot application starts in 1 second? Not even Hello World, right? So here I have everything. It's very fast, and what I can do now is to query this one. So I'll just do a get on port 9080, which is Open Liberty, and you can see I have nothing there because the database is empty. I have a MySQL database there, and so now I'll add some stuff, so I can use it. So let's do a Java class. I'll do a interface, and I call it a greeting repository there, and I'll extend the CRUD repository. I'll try to ignore what the JetBrains AI are giving me, so I'll just type it. Otherwise, it's no sport. So it's of type. It has the ID of long, and it's a greeting, and of course I need the at repository annotation. So this is all familiar to you from Spring Data, but if you're new to Jakarta EE, this is very cool. We like this. So here in my resource, I can now inject this greeting repository. I'll just greeting repository there. I'll fix this there. So I'm injecting this greeting repository, and now rather than returning an empty list, I can now query the database greeting repository, find all to list. What did I do wrong? To list, you shouldn't need to return. Let me see here. Find all. It should be to list, isn't it? What am I doing wrong here? Oh, I have to. Oh yeah, I did it the wrong way. I should have done the IntelliJ thing. That's why you should use the Eclipse IDE, right? It's much better. So here I have the find all method. So now I can query the database here. This is why I like doing like live audience talks, because if you're at home doing virtual talks, you don't get any help. So now I can do. It's still nothing in the database, and then we'll do this this add method as well. So here it just gives me to it. So I can save it like this, but what I do, I'll actually create this saved thing. So I'm very clear what I'm doing, and I'll do in this response. I'll print something. So I'll greeting saved with ID, and then I'll take the saved get ID. So I have this. Just print this. So now I can go here again, and I'll do a post. So I'll do the message from, and I'm not thinking Mrs. Duke right yet. Let's take Duke. So I'll have a hello from Duke, and I'm posting it to this greetings. So, and here's a greeting saved ID. So you can notice that I'm a server-side developer, and when we have a red log statement, that means good. It worked. So red is good. And if I now query this one, you can see I now have the hello from Duke in my database. So it works very smoothly, and I can also let's add Ms. Duke as well from Ms. Duke. So I have these two messages in my database. So what if I now wanted to query by name? So that's where this Jakarta data cool stuff come in. So I can have this just have this return an optional greeting, and then I can do the let's do this find by name ignore case, and then the name. So I can write this kind of query language as the method signature. So now I have this find by name ignore case thingy, and now I can and create a find by name REST endpoint. And here I'll cheat a little because I already created it. So I can go by name in the path, right? And then get the path parameters. So it's very similar to Spring, but just a different annotation. And then I'll do the find by name ignore case and map it just the message and write not found if I can't find it. So when I've done that, I can now do the greetings and do by name. So I'll just write Duke here. And now you can see it says hello from Duke. So I get only that message from Duke. I don't get the Mrs. Duke or Miss Duke message. So this is how Jakarta data works. You see, it's very similar to Spring. So if you're migrating back and forth or want to try it out, it will feel very familiar for you. And there is an opportunity here, because as you saw, I demoed here IBM's implementation with OpenLiberty, and I talked about Hibernate from Red Hat. Backing Hibernate has the implementation of Jakarta data. But there are no implementations at either Eclipse Foundation or Apache Foundation yet. We are going to implement it in Eclipse Link, probably. It is implemented by another specification as well, that or implementation that I'll get to in a minute. But it would be nice to have an implementation of Jakarta data at Apache as well, so the Apache implementations could pick it up easily with the Apache 2 license. So if you're interested in making a career in open source and know things about Jakarta data, join the Apache Foundation and do this there. We will be very happy then. We also have this notion in 11 called prospective specifications. And the prospective specifications are specifications that are not part of the platform, they're not optional, but they may be or are very likely to be added later. And one of those that has been lingering around since Java EE8 is Jakarta MVC. And it standardized the action-based model view controller pattern. So it's very much like Spring MVC. But it's turned around. So Jakarta MVC builds on top of Jakarta REST. Whereas in Spring, you have the REST controller built on top of Spring MVC. So it's the same, just the other order. And this is perfect for lightweight, simple applications where you want to use a template engine of your choice. In this example, I'm using JSP, that's the default one. But if you want to use Timely or any other, it's very easy to. I think it would be cool here to have an HDMX view engine for Jakarta MVC. And we don't have that now, but it's very easy to create a new view engine. And it's very, very extendable. There are like 12 or so default in our implementation. But it's easy to, as I said, to create a new one. And because server-side rendering is sort of coming back. So this is maybe a very well-timed addition in Jakarta 12, maybe. Then we have someone that is almost prospective. And that's Jakarta NoSQL. And it standardizes integration with NoSQL databases the same way as Jakarta Persistence standardizes SQL databases. And what's interesting with NoSQL, Jakarta NoSQL, is that the implementation called Eclipse JNoSQL, that implements not only Jakarta NoSQL specification, but also the Jakarta data specification. So this is maybe an implementation we will use as the compatible implementation for Jakarta data, even though it's not Jakarta Persistence. But Jakarta data doesn't define which type of data store you're using. We also have a specification which, this is also an opportunity if you know what gRPC is or proficient in it. There is a very good baseline created and donated or contributed by Oracle. So they've started it, but they haven't had time to kind of move it along. So if you want to move along and create and be a hero and create a Jakarta RPC specification, this is the project to join, because they need people that just get them moving. And all the vendors are interested in this one. So you would get help from IBM and Oracle and Red Hat and all the others to move this along if you wanted to put some time into it. And that's to standardize gRPC within Jakarta. We're not replacing gRPC in Java in any way. You know, we just want to make it easier to use. So to sum up, Jakarta EE 9 was the release where we did the namespace change, and as I said, I promise we won't do it again unless you ask us to, but I don't think we will. There is actually that part of the migration from Spring Boot 2 to 3 is actually not the hardest one. There are other things that are hard, but we have some good toolings here as well, because we did this back in 2020. And then we created something called transformations. So we have these Eclipse Transformer and the Apache Tomcat migration tool that will do this namespace for you for the transitive dependencies. And that's the issue with the Spring migration. It's not the code base yourself. That's just you search and replace or use the IDE or open rewrite or something. But it's the transitive dependencies that you're pulling in and you don't have control of the source code. That's the issue. And we have the tooling for that. So if you look up the Eclipse Transformer or the Apache Tomcat migration tools, these will do the bytecode transformation for you. And it can do it on the fly, on your computer, or in your CI system as a Maven plugin or Grade plugin or whatever. It's very flexible. Yeah, that's the transformation, and these are the tools. So look up these if you haven't done the migration yet and you have problems with your transitive dependencies. So Jakarta EE 10 is the release out there now. It had a lot of updates. You already have this in your Spring applications if you're using that. Jakarta 11 is coming very soon. And data is the new cool thing there. Otherwise, there are maintenance updates of most of them. There are some very nice convenience features in persistence. And overall, we will make it easier to use and cleaner code base by introducing records where appropriate. And we're supporting virtual threads. So in June, July, you will have Java 21 available, records everywhere where you need it, Jakarta data, more CDI-centric, and we're deprecating and removing a lot of dead meat. So I hope that will help the performance and developer productivity for you and your applications. And remember, we are on 21 even though we compiled to 17 because we support 21 and we test for it. So the TCK ensures that everything runs on 21. If you want to know more about Jakarta EE, you can go to jakarta.ee. If you want to try it out, go to start.jakarta.ee. It's a starter, it's similar to the Spring initializer. You can generate the project for you. And all the specifications are under jakarta.ee/specifications. I write a weekly #Jakarta EE blog post. You can just keep an eye on what's going on in the Jakarta space, because sooner or later you will get it in your code base. Even if you're a Spring developer, you're also a Jakarta EE developer because you're using so much of these technologies underneath. And the demo code for this application is on, it's called Duke's Data. It's on my GitHub. You can just Google Duke's Data. I don't think there will be many other projects called that. If you want to learn more about Jakarta EE, I have a course on LinkedIn that is called Jakarta EE Overview. If you have a LinkedIn account, LinkedIn Learning account, you can do it there. If you don't have an account or anybody paying this for you, this is where my first slide with Connect with Me comes in, because you can connect to me on LinkedIn, say you saw my presentation here, you're interested in the course, and I can send you a free link to this course. If you want to have some influence in what's going on with Jakarta EE, please do our Jakarta EE developer survey. It closes in a couple of weeks. It's like a 5-minute survey, and it's very applicable to Spring developers as well. Just tell us how you're using the technologies, how you're using Enterprise Java, Java, Cloud Natives, whatever, and give us some input to where we should move the platform in the future. And with that, I thank you very much for coming and listen. And we have 5 minutes for questions. We can take them manually here. I don't have the Lido stuff. I don't know if you've posted there, but if you ask a question, the first 2 will get a pair of socks. So, any questions, comments? You can say, "Can I have a pair of socks?" Yeah, you're up there.
I had a few, I wrote them. Okay, so you were showing the greetings class.
Yes.
Can you a record also?
The greetings class, the entity.
Yes.
So I know they've incorporated records as embeddable types and ID classes, I'm not sure if you can use the records as an entity. I would have to try it out, but it's a good suggestion. I'll try it out afterwards and see if it works.
Okay, another one. So basically you put there an interface.
Yes.
Somewhere there has to be a code in the background for the repository. Is it done compile time or runtime?
So how is the Jakarta data done? Compile time or runtime? I think that varies. I think they're using annotation processors here and there. And I know that there was a discussion last week about what should we allow of this stuff. Should it be at runtime but it's depends how they implement it. You'd have to ask IBM or Hibernate how they do it. I think Hibernate does, or in Wildfly, which brings in Hibernate, I think they do it as an annotation processor. Yes?
What about microservices config? Is it planned to put that into the platform sometime?
Okay, so the question is it planned to put in microprofile config in the platform sometime? So we already have created a Jakarta config specification that is planning to do that. First, I'll align so we have a common ground with microprofile config and Jakarta config. This project has taken a little longer than we anticipated. So the plan was that create a foundation, have microprofile config potentially depend on it if they add stuff that microprofile needs, or even replace it. But they haven't released anything yet, and they are working on it. And every time I ask, it's we're going to release something in the next 6 months. So if you're interested in that, just poke them on the mail list and say, hey guys, what's going on? What's happening? And so they see that there is interest about it. But yes, there are plans of doing some common ground there. Microprofile config will not be moved over, but it may depend on Jakarta data. And when Jakarta data provides all the functionality microprofile config needs or uses, it may not be needed any longer. So we'll see. Yes?
How do you expect Jakarta data to evolve? Do you think the future will contain all the common parts between JPA and NoSQL?
Okay, so the question is, how should Jakarta data evolve? So I expect it to I'm not sure if it does everything that Spring Data does today, or if there is some catch-up to do. I know they have a lot of issues, and they had some. They had to kind of limit. We cannot bring in more ideas right now because we need to release this 1.0. So there are things coming, and I think the best way to figure out where they're headed is to look at their issue tracker and see what are their plans. But already today, as you see, Jakarta NoSQL and Jakarta data is very combinable, and the JNoSQL implementation implements both. So there are some common ground there. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Unfortunately, I have to leave today, but come by the Eclipse Foundation booth and ask any questions you have there if you didn't get it answered now. And those two of you who earned the socks, come down here and get them. Thank you very much.